Hello and welcome back to the Cartoonist Studio. This week, no preamble, I'm going to be showing you the stages of me illustrating. I think this is the second page of the graphic novel idea I'm working on called Pixie Wood, and we'll go into a little bit more detail as to what it is all about. So without any further ado, let's go and see me mess up a perfectly good comics page. Hello and welcome back to the Cartoonist Studio. Well, I'm slightly speeded up today because I'm going to be drawing, or rather penciling, an entire comics page. And those of you who saw the last video that I did will know that I mentioned that I could be doing this page, and I could be doing an ongoing series, shall we say, within this channel. And it was going to be about a set of characters I've had in my mind for many, many, many years. And they live in a magical, enchanted, if you like, woodland called Pixie Wood. So why, if it's taken so long, am I still doing it? Well, put simply, I've had these characters, and I started off with a few basic characters, and they've developed, it's a whole world of its own. And I've tried it on a variety of stages, should we say, platforms, not stages, a variety of platforms. And none of them have quite clicked, although it's not strictly two. I did send it out as a syndicated comic strip to the then top syndicates, and that was King Features Syndicates, Universal Press when it was still Universal Press, Tribune Media, Creator Syndicate, LA Times Syndicates, and United Features Syndicate when that was still here. And I think it was Tribune Media actually wrote back saying it was down by one vote as to whether they were going to take the cartoon strip on. That's obviously, whereas it's not a standard form rejection slip, it's still not the goal that you want, the syndicate contract. So I knew that I got something in this cartoon. Everyone who had ever seen it had really enjoyed the characters and the concept and the idea. But what I lacked was a successful format, shall we say, or a decent format with which to launch these characters into a largely unsuspecting world. So who are they? Well, but basically, when my grandfather passed back in the early 80s, I kind of wanted to do something that was a little bit of a homage to him. Now, he'd always told me stories when I was a kid. He was a great storyteller, was my granddad. He's an Irishman, and he could tell some wonderful stories. And we used to sit there, and me, my brother and sister, although I don't remember those two being around, I'm sure they were, but I was just enthralled by the tales that he told me about all manner of things. He'd tell me horror stories, ghost stories, but he'd also tell me wonderful tales about the little people, the wee folk, the leprechauns, and all that sort of stuff. And something must have stuck in my head, and when he died, I remember a way of trying to console myself, I guess. I sat down with a sketch pad, which is what I usually did when I was feeling like I didn't want to be part of the world, and I started drawing these characters. And at the time, I think I had a few. I had a little elf character. He was called Finbar, and this girl, fairy, I would say she would be, and she was called Honeydew. And this other character, at the time he was an old wizened type character, and he was called Dram Nielsen. Now Dram Nielsen changed slightly into the character that I've just drawn now, and he became Dram O'Mara. Dram O'Mara is a leprechaun, and he does enjoy the pochine. He enjoys the easy life, although he has the most horrific harridan of a wife, who we never see, but it does give him a bit of a rough time. But he also has a little sidekick who I'm going to be drawing pretty soon now. Now he's kind of like he's not an imaginary friend as such, but only he can see him, if you understand what I mean. And he can only see him when he's had a little too much of the hard stuff, which is pretty much all the time. So this character comes floating out of a demijohn or a jar of pochine. And the character is called Zimmergy P. Lonigan. Now I love the name. It's the kind of a name that it was inspired by the beautiful creation that Al Cap created in Little Abner. He had a character, I believe, called Jubilation T. Corpone, which I thought, I could have that wrong. I was told this. I've never seen the character. I was told it. So if I have got it wrong, please excuse me. It was someone winding me up. But what a lovely name if it is true. And I had this love of silly names because my granddad came up with one as well. He always used to refer to a fictitious friend of his. And he was always in these stories. And I said, I was being told this story by Tady. And we'd say, who's Tady? He said, well, Tady is a shortened version of his full name. And his full name is Thaddeus G. McGillicuddy III. And I love that name. And it's just because it rolled around the tongue. It didn't roll off the tongue, it rolled around the tongue, and you could almost taste it. So when I came to create this little character that I'm drawing now, this elephantine character, who can only be seen by Zimmergy and only when he's had too much to drink, is a rather sort of cantankerous character. They argue with each other an awful lot, but they're also great friends. Like most great friends argue, but they're friends at the end of it all. And like I said, the name is Zimmergy P. Lonigan. Where did you get that from? Well, quite simply, Zimmergy is an actual word. Zimmergy means of or pertaining to the fermentation process, which is pretty much what he is. He only turns up when Dram's drunk, and he comes out like a will-o'-the-wisp out of this demijohn, or empty demijohn, I'd say, of pochine. Now, like I said, there are quite a few other characters in the strip, and that I guess is where the problem started. It became a little bit too complicated. There wasn't, should we say, a central character. Like you've got a huge character in Peanuts, but the central character is Charlie Brown. He's that kind of a bland personality that sort of is the middleman, should we say, that everyone sort of crashes against, should we say. They're all individual, but they all come to Charlie Brown as a central character. And it was the same with Beetle Bailey. There was a lot of characters in there, but Beetle Bailey and Sarge were the two main characters, I guess, to my viewpoint. And that's the same with any cartoon strip that has a large cast. Bloom County, it was Opus the Penguin. But this comic didn't have a set main character. I guess, well, actually, that's not strictly true. I think I discovered after a while that the main set character was the actual Woodland. It wasn't one particular thing. It was a place where they were. Now, I know you could say that Beetle Bailey, it was the army camp, Peanuts, it was just the all-American neighborhood, and Bloom County, well, Bloom County. But they weren't. They did have set identifiable main characters. Pixie Wood has a lot of different characters that all blend together, but not necessarily as a whole. They can live individually. They do live their own individual lives. And that is where I finally came up with the idea that I was lacking. Because you see, up until then, I'd had trouble placing it anywhere because it was a cartoon strip and it had no central character. I tried it as a novel, but once again, no central character. It sort of like it was amorphous. It was almost like a cloud that you couldn't quite hold down, and so it just didn't work for me, and it frustrated me because every time I'd see these characters, or every time I was having a quiet moment, I'd pick up the pencil. The first thing I would draw would be one of these characters. And it was almost like it was taunting me. It was mocking me. And it really frustrated me. I tried everything. God, I even tried hypnotherapy once to see if I could release this idea that I knew was inside me. But nothing ever happened until a few months ago. And what happened a few months ago? Well, it was a weird situation. I'd gone for a walk into some woodland. Well, it wasn't a woodland. There was a pathway that went through a woodland. And it was a very peaceful place. I knew it was quiet. I knew I wanted to be on my own to try and think. And I was walking along, and as usual, whenever I see woodland, my mind went to Pixie Wood. It always did. I kept thinking, I wish I could draw this. I wish I could come up with something. I wish it could be a form of an income for me, that I could just draw these characters that I'd just grown to love so much over the years. And I did. I don't know whether it was out of desperation, whatever it was. I just literally stood and looked at all the trees. And I said, you know the idea. You know the magic that a woodland gives. So I said, I'm going to stand here and I'm going to close my eyes and you're going to give me a story. And that's what I did. I know it sounds like a lot of hocus pocus, and you see a lot of people on the internet sort of saying, come to me, it's all positive thoughts. Give your thoughts to the universe, give your dreams to the universe, and the universe will give you your answers. And I guess it was a little bit of that. Maybe I'd been watching a video on that. I don't know what it was, but I closed my eyes. That's a very difficult thing to do. Even though I knew that there was no one around, you still feel like a bit of an Alviges. But I stood there in the middle of this path, in the middle of nowhere, and I waited for the idea. Now, whether the trees did give me an idea, I don't know, or whether the idea that was there all along came out. And it just popped into my head, and I thought, my God, it worked. I've got a Pixie Wood story, or at least enough of a story to be able to develop a lot more. I got a beginning and a middle. I just haven't got the end. Well, that's no problem, because you just follow it through to its natural conclusion. I came rushing back, and I wrote all this down, and other ideas popped into my head, and peripheral ideas came in, and all the things that go to make up a story. And I thought, this is happening. It's actually happening. I was so excited. And then it stopped. It dried up. So what do you do in a situation like that? You're almost there. You're within touching distance of what you want. But something in my mind didn't depress me. I didn't think, oh, that's it. It's gone. I can't think of it. It's finished. Something in my mind, it was like it was a still voice, but I couldn't quite hear what it was saying. But I knew that just hold on. And then it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was looking at a picture that I've got. It's framed and hanging up on the wall of the characters of Pixie Wood that I drew. And it had been done, it had been framed for me, and I was just looking at it. And then it came into my head, the very thing that I saw as a weakness, which was too many characters not connected, only connected by this woodland. There was no main character. I saw that as a weakness, but the idea I got actually was its strength. And that was, I'm going to do Pixie Wood as a soap opera. It's going to be lots of little stories, like this particular story here. We're going to run this one, and I'll do it for about 3 or 4 pages, and then I'll leave that one hanging whilst I go to see some of the other characters within Pixie Wood, and they'll have a story, and I'll do 3 or 4 pages of that, and then I'll come back to this one, or I may go to a third story. I'll try and run 2 or 3 mini stories at any one time, pretty much like all of our lives are. We don't just sort of wake up and have an adventure, and then the next day wake up and have another adventure. We have life. Life happens to us, and it happens to our friends. And sometimes our friends' lives crash into our lives. So our lives are affected by our friends' lives and their adventures or expeditions or problems or whatever. So I thought, this is it. So yeah, the story I'd had was still a great story, and it could be developed into a very, very long storyline. But that was the idea. I was just going to do that. I thought, I thought you can't do that. All stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's the rules. That's how it goes. And then I thought, okay, those are the rules. But where did the rules come from? The rules came from someone coming up with the rules one day. So what's stopping someone else coming up with new rules? That's what effectively I'm doing. I'm coming up with new rules. So that's the idea behind Pixie. Like I said, there will be explanations in the newsletter when I get round to writing it. But that'll be mainly sort of keeping you up to date with what's going on and the characters. So I suppose we should talk about, well, the characters. Like I said, there's a fair few of them in there. Not a huge amount, but there's enough for them to be a little bit confusing if they were all in the daily strip. But put together in a storyline, you get more of a chance of being introduced to them. Like if I put them over the space of a 6 or 7 page story, then you get a bit more inside knowledge on that character or the characters around it. Well, okay, so first of all, you've got these two. You've got Dramamara and Zimiji P. Lonigan. So those are the first ones we're going to come to, mainly because they're the ones that I enjoy drawing the most. Other people who have seen it enjoy the characters. Other two characters who are very popular are Finbar and Honeydew. Finbar is an elf. He's a bit of a loner, although Honeydew, who is a female fairy, I would imagine, she has a definite thing for him. She's very gentle and soft-spoken, magical. As Finbar is fairly magical, but not the same level as Honeydew. And they have this kind of, like, Finbar knows that Honeydew has a thing for him, and he just kind of like plays it along. He plays the single guy. He's stringing her along, if you like, because he has this other life of his own, which he's out causing all kinds of mischief wherever he goes. And they have two main connecting characters. The one is a very angry and extremely strong dwarf called Flynn Sortith. Now he is secretly besotted with Honeydew. He knows he hasn't a chance. He's a gruff, old, miserable dwarf. What on earth would a beauty like Honeydew see in him? So he never says anything to her, but just secretly admires her from afar. It's a sad situation, but you know what? It's the world over. Unrequited love, if you like. It's always gone on, it always will go on. And it's so sad when you see it, and there's nothing you can do except feel such huge pity for the person who knows they're always going to look at that person and never be able to be any more than just a friend. But the problem is that Finbar knows how Flynn feels, and he uses it because those two hate each other. It's brains against brawn. Flynn Sortith, there was an expression my grandfather used to use, great Irish expression. He used it about his great uncle Sullivan, who was a brawler who used to go around all the various fairs in Ireland back in the sort of late 1800s, early 1900s. And he used to get all of the strongmen, because you used to go to a fair and there'd be someone there sort of say, last 2 rounds or 1 round with our man, and you win the bag of coins. So he used to feel sorry for him. So he'd go around all the 3 fairs that were in the large town that he lived in, and he'd have all of the strongmen in the same ring, and he'd take them all on together. He said he thought it was a bit of a fairer fight and it saved him time. So he'd go and trounce them all and take the money and then disappear into the pub for a few days. And that was how he made his income. So my granddad used to describe how strong he was in this way. He said, my great uncle Sullivan was so strong, he could not only pick himself up, but he could hold himself out at arm's length. And that's a very typical Irishism. And I thought that would be a great description for Flynn. He's so strong, he can not only pick himself up, but he can hold himself out at arm's length. And he is so... Finbar just manages to wind him up. and it doesn't take much to get Flynn angry. So there you have the age-old thing of brains against brawn. Sometimes Finbar wins the arguments, sometimes Flynn does. But the one thing that he can do is he can always give Flynn hope. He tells him how he can get Honeydew's attention, and it's always a trick. It's pretty much like Charlie Brown kicking the ball. You know he's not going to kick it, but you just watch it. It's like it's an accident happening in front of your eyes. You want to look away, but you can't. You're just drawn to it. And that's what happens between those two. So that's their connection, if you like. Now, Honeydew doesn't know any of this. And of course, Flynn always takes Finbar's advice, and there's always a mess up at the end, and that's it. The argument goes on. But Finbar's having a great time. So that's those three. Flynn sort of is a loner, but he can have stories on his own. His very loneliness allows him to bring stories. He's a tremendous master craftsman, like all dwarfs were. He creates things out of gold, but he creates things out of leprechaun gold. And that's the problem, is because the only leprechaun they've got is Dramamara, who's always drunk, has a list of where his rainbow is, but can't find the list. And when they say, well, she'll just wait for the rain and the rainbow will turn up, and he's saying, no, he said, have you ever wondered why there's so many rainbows? I'm not the only leprechaun in the world. Each leprechaun's got its own rainbow. When you see a rainbow, that's one leprechaun's rainbow. Now, that's not folklore. That's just me coming up with a reason, shall we say. So you see that they can be connected, but they're not connected. And Flynn has got no patience. He doesn't suffer fools gladly. And Pixie wood abounds with fools. So you can see that he's got many excuses, many reasons to lose his temper. And another two that frustrate him are Tuggy and the creature from the 5 and 7/8 dimension. Tuggy is a shape-shifting puka. Now, a puka is a character from Irish legend. It's just literally a shapeshifter, can turn into any creature. But what happened was, with a clout on their head during mid-change, Tuggy has forgotten who he was changing from and what he was changing into, and spends most of his life trying to regain his original form. Not that he knows what it is. So he is a mixture of quite a few animals. I'd say there's probably, I don't know, maybe a cockerel in there, there's a bunny rabbit in there, there's maybe a little bear in there, there's all sorts of creatures in there. And he has this friend, I said, the creature from the 5 and the 7 and 8 dimension, who is always trying to help him, genuinely trying to help him. So their storyline is they're always trying to find a way of getting the puka back into his original form, or finding a way of getting his memory back. And the other half of that story is that the puka will try and help the creature from the 5 and 7/8 dimension back into his dimension. And why is it the 5 and 7/8 dimension? My explanation is because the creator forgot to carry the 1. That's just my explanation. And so there's those two characters, and because they're both a bit daft, and also the creature speaks in, his word balloons are made up of symbols. So only Tuggy, for some reason, can understand him. And that comes from a story from my childhood when my brother, well, all of us when we were little kids, went to Spain, and my brother struck up a friendship with a little Spanish boy who didn't speak a word of English. My brother didn't speak a word of Spanish. But for some reason, they jabbered away to each other, understood each other, and they would giggle and laugh at stuff they were saying, and no one knew on earth what they were talking about. But they did. So that's it. That comes from that. So there's those characters. And there are other characters. There's the Goblin King who lives in the kingdom beyond the Dark Portal. But there'll be more about that as the story progresses. And who else is there? Oh yes, there's the Tree of Dubious Knowledge. Now, there's always been these things about the Tree of Knowledge. This is the Tree of Dubious Knowledge. These are two trees who are battling with each other. The one's a short, stubby, fat one. The other one's a very tall, thin one. The one's rather pompous. The other one is just a bit more laid back. But they can magic up the Book of Erse, which is the Book of Old Irish. And they've got their fables and folklores and stuff like that. So they'll be gone to whenever there's issues that need solving. They go to the Tree of Knowledge. There was another character called Doctor Who, who's an owl. It's spelled Doctor in H-O-O, and he's with the Trees of Dubious Knowledge. A big lump of pomposity, thinks he's brilliant, really isn't. But he may or may not be in. I'm not too sure whether I'm going to keep him in there or not. And then the final main character is my granddad, the Shanachie. He lives in a little cottage on the edge of the woodland, and he kind of documents their lives. They allow him into their world and their craziness, if you like. And he is a caricature of my granddad, and the character's called Owl Bob. My granddad being called Bob Dixon. So he's in there just for me because it's a homage to my granddad. This cartoon was a homage to my granddad, and I couldn't, in all honesty, have a cartoon strip that didn't have him in it. So he's in it as well, and he comes in from time to time. They all come in from time to time. And there's other characters that come into the strip every now and again, like a pair from another book I did called Brabbles and Boggets, and a ridiculously overconfident yellow mouse and a doom and gloom caterpillar who just wander around the place getting into all kinds of scrapes. So they'll come into the story every now and again, maybe once a year. And there's also a character in there whose name I haven't decided yet, but he just turns up in a cloud like a big pop sound, and he's there, and everyone looks at him, he looks around, and he disappears again. And there's no other reason, but he's there. You've got to find out why, because one day may be explained. Who knows? And the person who it's based on, well, he knows who he is, don't you? Right, I'll say no more on that one, because that's just going to be one of those things that hopefully make the cartoon interesting. So there's a lot more to tell. There's loads of stories to tell. I've got characters in there that just write themselves, and I hope that you'll enjoy the journey, shall we say. The journey and excitement that is Pixie Wood. Now, I also know on a final point that I've spelt Pixie wrong. It should be P-I-X-I. But when I wrote it, well, I still am dyslexic, but at the time I didn't realise I was dyslexic. And that's how I spelt it, P-I-X-Y. And when I realised that I'd got it all wrong and spelt it all wrong and made a right owl idiot out of myself, I went to correct it, but it just never looked right spelled correctly. So I just left it. I thought, well, maybe that's how they spell it. Maybe it's their woodland, so maybe they spell it P-I-X-Y. So that's why I'm spelling it that way. Yep, so there you go. So this is going to be a soap opera, a diary, if you like. And I know that books don't normally do it. They don't normally come out, they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Well, like I said, I'm just going to change that format over. Maybe at the end of each year, if I've got 3 stories going, I just let them naturally finish together, like a cut-off point, if you like. And then I'll start another bunch of stories. And when I do that, well, then that can be the book collection. And that's the other thing. Obviously, if I produce these things, I'd like people to go and buy it. I'd like to make it into some kind of a living for myself, if I can. And if you enjoy it, and I sincerely hope you will, then perhaps you will go out and purchase it. Like you can purchase any of my books. Universal links in the description below for everything that I've done, all on Amazon. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I won't be showing you the whole story every week, showing you a whole page and then finishing at the end so you can see it, because that's defeating the object. If I print it on here, you've got no desire to go out and buy the finished product. So I'll give you tasters from every now and again. I'll show you a page, I'll pencil a page, or ink a page, or I'll pencil and ink a panel, or something like that. And I'll tell you how the story's going on, where it's progressing, who's doing what. And so maybe that will whet your appetite to want to see much, much more. I may run the story on Webtoons, I really don't know. But anyway, this is the long talked about and much promised video on the graphic novel, having decided finally which one I'm going to go ahead with and how I'm going to do it. So hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up, like and subscribe, hit the notification bell. and it really does help the channel grow if you do that. If you share it amongst your friends or any groups that you're in that think may be interested in what it is that I'm doing. And yeah, okay, that's it, I guess. Thanks once again for your company. Sorry it's a little bit late, but my life is extremely hectic. It's just the way it is. And but I'll try and get the next one out as soon as I can, and I'll try and get the newsletter out to those who have already subscribed. If you'd like to subscribe to my newsletter, then my email is in the description below. Please just go to it, send me an email saying, yep, I'd like to be added to your email list, and I will do just that. In the meantime, have a great few weeks, and I'll see you on the next video. And until then, bye-bye for now.